Hello, water ski world, and welcome to the Water Ski Podcast. Those of you of a very discerning nature will have realized that I'm not, in fact, your regularly scheduled host, Mr. Matteo Luzzeri. I'm, in fact, Freddie Winter. And Matteo is our subject this week, someone that is going to be the interviewee, not the interviewer. I've been hassling Matteo slightly, ever since I sat down with him for the interview that he did of me to say, listen, everyone needs to hear your story. And he was, typical Matteo fashion, quite modest. I don't know about that. But finally, I got a hold of him and we sat down and did this interview last week. Anyone that's listened to this will know that Matteo is an incredibly intelligent, smart, and interesting guy. So we talked about his start in skiing, his progression, his ambitions through the juniors, his move to the US and collegiate skiing, and interestingly his studies and that sort of battle that a lot of young skiers go through of what takes precedence, skiing or studies, something that obviously Matteo did incredibly well. So yeah, we've done this episode, and then there's another one coming next week or in the next few days, which is quite exciting. I think that one was a good one too. So I'll keep it pretty brief, but except to say that anyone that listens to this before this weekend should definitely tune into the Mastercraft Pro webcast of a fantastic tournament, all the best skiers in the world, and presented by the Water Ski Broadcasting Company, former guests, of course, and guys that are doing a great deal of good for the sport. So if you fancy watching that, then I think you'll have a good time as a ski fan or a fan of sport, whatever it might be. So that's really enough from me for the moment, and let's move on to the interview. So I hope you really enjoy it, and catch up soon, guys. Cheers.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Before we get into, I guess, what would be my interview, I just wanted you to know that this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Pigoski. Pigoski is the first apparel brand solely dedicated to the water ski community. Created by pro water skier Robert Pigozzi, one of the guests of this show, Pigoski sports a wide range of apparel items and accessories with a unique combination of vintage wooden ski era vibes and new school terminology and design. My favorite item, which I'm currently wearing right now as I record this, is the pink Cozy Space, a super cool hoodie with the usual reminder of creating space before the next ball. Pigoski is clearly driven by the same passion I have for the Water Ski Podcast, so I'm happy to announce that we are collaborating on a Pigoski item inspired by the Water Ski Podcast, which we will hopefully release by the end of the year. In the meantime, don't wait and get your favorite apparel item at pigoski.com/thewaterskipodcast and enjoy free shipping for the next 2 weeks. Pigoski, the apparel everyone will envy once you show up at the lake. Now, back to the interview.
Okay. So we start?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so Mr. Matteo Luzzeri, you're no stranger to the microphone that you have in front of you. You have traveled far and wide, both throughout physical in your physical location, but also through the internet. You've done a lot of episodes, and I believe this is episode number 50. And so you are now the subject, and so you'll get the treatment that you have given to many wonderful and wild people. So,
I think I should be excited, right? Like I want to think I treated my guest well. So provided I get the same treatment, should be all right.
Absolutely. Well, welcome to your podcast. And how do you feel about this? You must be quite excited.
Well, yeah. It's funny, I was nervous before it, like a lot of the guests that I've had, including you, said. But now, no, it now feels normal. I have my microphone in front of me. I have your face on the computer. Let's get this going. Okay,
well, the formalities are somewhat out of the way. And as you know more than anyone, there is a way that the Water Ski Podcast works. And so the first question is... please tell me, Matteo, how did you get into water skiing?
Well, as a lot of guests said, through family and specifically through dad. Dad was working at a boat company, and basically was asked by his boss to do rescue boat on Lake Iseo for a water ski tournament. And he didn't know what water skiing was, and he was on this like paddle boat rescuing skiers that were, you know, throwing big sprays, jumping over the ramp, doing like maneuvers on a trick ski, and he fell in love instantaneously. And so him and some of his co-workers ended up saving enough money to buy a wrecked outboard from the company they were working at, to try and learn how to water ski. And the legend goes that after my dad's friends had a couple of solid attempts and managed to ski, my dad tried and broke the rope twice. So basically the analogy he gave is the one of like playing soccer and then you throw the ball on the roof and basically nobody gets to play anymore. So then he found a ski shop, bought a water ski rope, and eventually got out of the water. And not easy thing for my dad. He's a little bit of like a cube with arms and legs, if I may say. And then after that, yeah, like he got into the sport, and I wasn't born yet at the time because he was in his late 20s. Mom was his boat driver. So mom got the boat license and was driving him around Lake Iseo until basically he got to meet my coach, Claudio Benatti, who had a ski school on Lake Iseo for like a year and then moved into a artificial lake, basically a former gravel pit. And basically when I was about 7, I tried water skiing, enjoyed it, but not crazily. I mean, I was going to the lake to do all the activities that are connected to a ski club in Europe, right? So foosball, swimming, canoeing, sand volleyball, playing around with kids, you know, diving. That was really what I was about. And then, yeah, like that's how I got exposed to the sport. And for 2 or 3 years, I was doing combos, slalom course, but combos. And then at 10 years old, something clicked and I decided to get into it. And it's been an ever increasing love since.
It's a funny thing for me too. We've been friends for over a decade now, and I can't even imagine a situation where you aren't just head over heels in love with water skiing and sort of considering it above most other things. So it's funny to think of you as the child who was like, yeah, I don't care that much about skiing. I like table football and I like this, but I like skiing too.
Love table football, man. Love to this day. Like it's one of the things, as you know, that you'll find in any Italian water ski school. Table football, you know. And I was really into it. So and also into skiing, but it wasn't never something like I would go to the lake and not ski for a week, you know. But I would go almost every day. Dad would ski, I would swim, I would do other things. And then at 10 years old, I think all the other kids, you know, of the other families that were at the club kind of started tricking, and Dad bought them a ski, you know, like they were getting serious about it. And I, at least out of my memory, out of my own will, I remember telling Dad, like, I don't want to do, because, you know, in Italy, we have mini basketball, which is the basketball for elementary school. Basically, the hoop is a little, you know, like it's not as high as the regular hoop. And I was doing that. And I said, Dad, I don't want to go to mini basketball. I want to water ski. Like I want to do that as a sport. And that was, you know, the usual rule. If you decide to do a season, you finish it, and then you decide after the season is over if you want to continue or stop. But if you decide to ski for that season, you ski. And I don't recall a season where I said, Dad, I don't want to ski anymore. So whatever he did the right thing, you know, not pushing me, just letting me discover the love for the sport by myself.
So a very healthy situation where you were not pushed, you were sort of able to do it as much as you wanted to, but you were made to understand that it was a commitment that you know once you commit to it, you turn up.
Oh, for sure. Like the original lake where my coach opened his ski school, like the artificial lake, was about 40 minutes from home. And over those years, we changed different bodies of water to be able to ski. You know, as we said several times, like land in Europe is expensive. You don't just buy a lot of land and dig a lake. It's not as simple. So you have to find those gravel pits, sand pits that, you know, allow you to ski. And in those years, we changed, I believe, 4 up until we opened San Gervasio. And it was always like 45 minutes to 30 minutes or an hour. Like, it was a commitment that I had to get out of work early. I had to get my homework done before I could go ski. It was a commitment. So certainly that made sure I understood that if I wanted to do this, I had to put effort in it, you know?
Well, so seeing as we're talking about your dad, let's just go back to his start. So he started on Lake Iseo, which I might be wrong, but I believe that would be the same lake that he's built a house on now. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's almost done. He's moving there next month. Yeah,
which is just crazy, isn't it? That, I mean, he started water skiing on that lake by chance, and now he's going to live there. And that chance encounter, as we see so often with, you know, water skiing is a hard sport to get into. You kind of have to be introduced to it, and that was his introduction, and that changed not just his life, his family's life, and changed your life. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, because of that and his efforts in water skiing, it changed the course of water skiing. We now have, potentially, without that chance encounter, there's no European tour happening in a normal summer that isn't affected by the coronavirus, which is pretty amazing, right?
Yeah. No, it's it's funny you say this, looping back, because my dad is originally from a town 10 minutes from San Gervasio, right? So when he managed to find the situation to open San Gervasio, it was a little bit of a first go back to roots, right? Namely his hometown. Like, his hometown is 10 minutes from here. And now that he's actually moving on the Lake Iseo, it's more of like a go back to roots in terms of water skiing. And it's funny because you might have heard the podcast I did about José Castelli, and José was the guy that taught my dad how to start off, like, do a deep water start with one ski. Well, where he had his ski school at the time is directly below where my dad is building his new home. And so I was on the terrace, on the balcony of the almost finished house, watching the lake with my dad, and I was like, Dad, easily a slalom course there. Like, you could fit it, you know? He goes, Matteo, I've already thought about it. I think this is where I would put the anchors and the dead weight for the, for the cable. I think I can get a permit to put a boat in that harbor there. I'm like, Dad, I was kind of joking, but you have already looked into it. That's awesome, you know?
Well, you can take a water skier off the water, but they'll still think about it.
Especially if you can see it off the... Dude, I can't wait for you to come next year. Like, it's lake 200 degrees view. Like, you have to turn around your neck and it's still lake. It's insane. So, no, for sure, he got back to his roots, you know, in terms of ski roots.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So, you know, I know your father as a ski school owner. So when did he go from, you know, given that that's such a big part of your story, when did he go from being just a guy that water skied to someone that was actually invested in water skiing in that way?
Yeah, so that happened around those late 90s. We had to change site. So Claudio opened his ski school. Claudio founded Jolly in 93, and up until 96, he had a partner, like business partner, who, I don't know, let's just say a bit volatile, not the most serious person in the world. And in 97, Claudio was trying to find some club members that wanted to join on a more, you know, managerial, involved way, not just show up and ski and leave. And one of them was a guy from Brescia. His name is Marco Bertini, who at the time owned a crane rental company named Jolly. So that's where the name Jolly came from. And the other guy was my dad. And my dad said, yeah, I want to be involved. I want to help. And interestingly enough, the reason why he wanted to be involved was to organize tournaments for kids. Now, was it because he had a kid that skied? Possibly, I don't know. But he just wanted to organize water ski tournaments for U10, U12, U14, U17. And so at the time, we had this super small lake, actually not too far from here, about 20 minutes from here, from San Gervasio, and 8-buoy course, right? And my dad invented this system where, you know, he had a jack underwater and 5-ball would go up and down so that you didn't have that bothering you at the gate. For those of you who have skied 8-buoy course, you know that struggle. And yeah, so he became president then, and he's been the president of Jolly since '97. That's how he got involved. Now, my dad's involvement with the ski school is not financial. Like, he doesn't make money out of this. He's not an employee of the ski school. He's the president of the club. But luckily, he has his own business, and he does very well. But his involvement is truly out of passion. Passion for water skiing, tournament organizing, watching kids at ski school over the years becoming, you know, national team members and European champs and all of that. So that's really how he turned this passion, I would say, primarily into that. He still skis, as you know, and he tries hard and he wants to run buoys, but it's a lot of like seeing the ski school grow. You know, and I think he's been very successful at that.
So, I mean, you can draw some very distinct parallels there between him wanting to organize tournaments to improve the kids and to therefore grow the sport, and then you know what you did however many years later with the San Gervasio Pro-Am. And I mean, of course, a lot of people deserve credit for that, including your dad, but you being probably the primary guy there.
Yeah.
And being we're all water skiers, but you have some people who are great, maybe water ski gentlemen or ambassadors, and I certainly hold you in that regard, and by all accounts him too. Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure, that is one of those. He might not be as well known internationally because, you know, he doesn't speak a word of English, and he's always done. The scope of his water skiing influence has been in Italy, right? But certainly, if I decided to do the San Gervasio Pro-Am, was from what I learned from him, primarily through observation, and also like when we organized the Junior Worlds here 10 years ago, just by trying to help doing that, you know. And I mean, I said this before. I mean, I saw Dad doing the work of like 20 guys by himself in the few months that led to the Junior Worlds. And then because of a lot of reasons, which we can get into later if you want, but like essentially we decided not to do IWWF sanctioned events. And so that's when the idea of a Pro-Am came about in 2014.
I'm excited for that discussion.
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Well, cool. Okay, so let's move back to you. So you were the kid that was interested in skiing amongst other things, but you decided to move away from mini basketball to being a water skier as your sort of main sport of interest. And from there, you became very competitive. And maybe walk us through that journey.
Yeah, so thinking back, once I decided to ski, I actually started to improve pretty quickly, which might be something cheesy to say, but I was always told by my coach that I was not that talented in water skiing. And he didn't spare to repeat that to me often, but as a weird, thwarted way of motivating me. Like he would say, you know, you see that guy, like whatever it takes him 10 sets to do is going to take you 30. But if you're willing to do the 30 sets and you're willing to work hard, you're going to get there. And over the years, what I noticed is that I'm still around and those guys, almost all of them are not. But I improved, and particularly in slalom, you know, like whether because he was really into slalom at that time, maybe it was the event he understood the best, or he was most passionate about, and maybe even my own prowess, like I improved in slalom a lot. Tricks and jump, not as quickly as the other two events, as the other event for sure. And by age 13, I was a fairly competitive U14 skier, which, you know, in those ages, 1 year is a world of difference, physically, psychologically, strength-wise. I was running, you know, into 35, the occasional running 35 at 13. I was pretty good. And I attribute that a lot to having strong examples here in Italy. I mean, Italy has a strong slalom tradition from the 70s, you know, like in Italy, if you take any decade from the 70s until now, you can find great water skiers, great slalom skiers. And so it wasn't hard to find reference points, like it wasn't hard to find inspiration. And for me, the inspiration was Matteo Ianni, for sure, who I had on the podcast a few episodes ago, just because he was that good. I mean, you remember, you're not that much younger than me. You remember the scores he was putting out, the way in which he was skiing. So he set all those, you know, U14 national record, U17 national record, U21 national record. So I always had him to chase. Never caught him, but it was a good target to aspire to, which for sure made me a better skier, for sure.
And in case anyone didn't catch that episode with Matteo, I mean, I remember it very well. Matteo was, you know, unfortunately it didn't go the way he maybe would have liked, but with various injuries. But I mean, he was the next untouchable. You know, he was the guy. Scores 41, 10.25. You know, from a very, very young age and insanely talented. So for you to have that would have really, really pulled you on.
I mean, dude, the guy at 18 years old ran 3 of 41 10 times. Remember the old rankings? You had the average, the two scores that were spelled out, like buoys at rope, and then you had a line with the third, fourth, fifth, sixth score, you know, just because in case you had a tie for ranking, you would go to third. His was 69, which is 3 of 41.
69.
69. Crazy. Won Princess that year. He won Princess that year.
At 18?
He won his, at 18. He beat Rossi in the final. I mean, he was insane. So obviously it wasn't hard to find inspiration, you know, like.
He would have kept pulling you on, you know, no matter, you know, I remember being a kid, you know, I would have the bad set and I go, well, I got to get better. I got to be better than I am because I got to be as good as X. And for you, that was Matteo Ianni.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember videos of him, you know, dry suiting 39. I was like, wow. I mean, I really need to step up my game and try as hard as I can, you know. You know, as you got a chance to know him a little bit, he's also a great guy off the water. So someone that I would always be happy to see at tournaments. It's easier, especially for someone like me, to be inspired if I like the person to begin with, you know. Of course, the skiing is important, but also like if I want to have a beer with them, then, and they're also great skiers, it's easy to get inspired. And so, those early days, like I was skiing good. I won U14 Europeans at age 14 in Vilvoorde, which is a weird freaking site, kind of like river in front of a dismissed nuclear plant. It was a bit surreal. But that was kind of my first win, you know, like the win that I went, wow, like I'm surrounded by these kids. I don't know any of them except the two that were in the van with me on the way up, and I came out on top. So that's pretty cool.
So this would have been 02?
02, yeah.
02 in Vilvoorde. And do you remember what you scored to win the under-14 Europeans?
Yes. So I was second in the prelims with 3 at 12. There was a guy from France who was first with 3.5. And then in the final, I scored 1.5 at 12, and I won. Now, second on that podium, this might surprise you, Bojan Šipner. Bojan Šipner started more as a slalom than a jump, and then quickly thereafter became more of a jumper.
It doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I was around not quite in 2002, but thereafter, I believe Bojan won the under 17 slalom championships.
I wouldn't be surprised.
He was a good slalom skier, very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was the podium. And then Stelio, I believe, Stelio Merolla from Italy got third with either 5 at 32 or half at 35, something like that. Yeah.
That's a high standard. Running halfway down 12 as an under 14, that's very, very high standard.
Yeah, in a shitty site, 2002. I mean, yeah, it was pretty high. And that year, interestingly enough, I won U14, Matteo won U17 in the same site, and Thomas won U21 and Open.
Well, the Italian dominance. That's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty much. Those were the years where you had, Thomas, Fabio Ianni, Ciapponi, Palombo, so Carlo, so many good skiers. I think in 04 or 03, at the European Championships, it was a runoff between Fabio and Thomas for gold, and third was Matteo. It was 3 Italians on the podium at Europeans. It was interesting to slalom in those years. A lot of good skiers.
That's quite amazing, really, isn't it? When you think about how many good skiers there have been come through Europe, and the Italians dominating like that. That's unusual, very unusual.
No, very unusual. And then I believe a year before, a year after, it was all Brits on the podium. So you had those two schools, UK and Italy, really producing a lot of slalom skiers, essentially.
Which the rivalry there, if we go to the top level, even up till now, Thomas de Gasperi versus Will Asher, the Italians versus the Brits.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it expanded down as well. Man, I remember my first Open Nationals final. So in Italy we have category nationals, which are more than nationals that every nation has. So you ski in your own category. And then you have Open Nationals, which you have to qualify for. And in slalom, they take top 8. The first time I made the final, I was last in with 2.5 at 39. The level.
At national championships.
National championships, top 8. I was 8th with 2.5 at 39.
Which, let's put that in perspective. This year, I think second at the US national championships with a population of, I'm going to say, 6 times Italy, 1.5 at 39. And, you call it a strange year, whatever it was. But that just shows the depth of Italian talent back then. Crazy, man. You had Thomas, Fabio, Matteo, Chap, Fabrizio Merlo, who some of our listeners may know, Gallegra. There's so many that could go deep 39. And by skiing 2.5 at 39, I kicked out Stefano Palombo, who was the first Italian guy to get to 3-ball at 41. So you weren't struggling for idols?
Oh no, there was a lot of inspiration. It's funny because I saw him he's from Sperlonga, and I saw him last weekend. He happened to be at dinner where I was at dinner, and I told him, I said, dude, I still remember watching you in Ravenna getting to 3-ball at 41. First Italian ever to get 3. Inspiring, and it was almost taken back because he's not really skiing anymore. It was oh, really? I was yeah, I remember that very strongly.
You do hear that. You do hear that from some skiers that you meet who've been out of it for a little while, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I remember when I was the legend." I remember when people used to look up to me, and yeah, it's pretty funny, right?
Yeah, it is. But if you used to look up, there's some people that if you grew up looking up to them, nothing matters anymore. You're still gonna have this sort of respect, even if you become better than them afterwards, you're still going to respect them as the people you were looking up to,
That aura never
physiological.
Never leaves.
Yeah, it never leaves. Yeah.
So you're 14 years old, you're under 14 European champion. And so at that, but on the one hand, you're clearly the best in Europe for your age, in the championship. On the other, you've got your coach, who is Claudio Bonatti, who I think maybe we'll get to in a second. But you've got who's telling you that you're not the most talented skier ever. What's your middle point there? What's your brain telling you at this time? Are you feeling okay? I'm going to be world champion, break records, or I got to keep plugging away. And what were your aspirations?
Wow, we're going back a little bit. I think as a kid, at least me, I was more in the moment. So I remember that when I won Europeans, all I could think about was the U14 national record, which was 2:38 by Matteo. And I was running 35 in practice. So I wanted that record desperately. And I remember chasing some tournaments in Italy, trying to run 35, finally managed to run it. No gates, so 0:35.
Oh,
Yeah, so basically, yeah, I think that was. I ended up the year feeling a little bit of a failure, despite I won Europeans.
that's crazy.
I know.
That's crazy. I can look back at myself as a 14-year-old. I'll tell you, if I had been able to win the under 14 Europeans, I would, I'd have been walking on air, man. So that's funny that you felt that you weren't fulfilling yourself if you hadn't broken the best ever score by your countrymen at that age.
Yeah, and then it's interesting because then I see it with kids nowadays too. They're chasing records more than wins. And it took me a few years to understand that no, like a win stays forever. A record comes and goes, and the second it's beaten, nobody even remembers what you did before, So but even a few years after, maybe because I had Matteo as an example, I don't know. But I ended up that '02 season as a 14-year-old on a little bit of a down note. I was like, man.
As the European champion.
As the European champion, yeah, exactly. And then we got into juniors. So in juniors, I got really unlucky. Unlucky, careless, I don't know. But basically, juniors is 3 years, and I had an injury every year, essentially. So I was never able to ski junior Europeans with that sort of confidence that comes from training, really, from training every day. I was lucky enough that I had that feeling at Junior Worlds because they were a little bit later in the year. It was at Jax, and I was second in the prelims behind J-Mac, and then in the finals I blew it. I think I got like fifth or sixth, one of those. But that was the only junior tournament, well, except the Masters, where I felt that I was healthy and I could train. But in those 3 years, I literally had an injury every summer, nagging or broken. Like I broke my MCL in 2005. Jumping.
How'd you do that? Jumping. Oh yeah.
Jumping
injury.
Classic jumping injury. Not that bad of a jump. Landed with the left a little bit on edge. Blew the MCL. And strained it to the point that I couldn't ski for almost 2 months. Issue was that was my last practice set before leaving for Sweden for the Europeans. So I basically ended up going to Sweden anyway because my dad had friends up there and he had bought tickets. So basically I went there on crutches watching my archie rival Stelio winning easily. It was the worst feeling in the world, dude. The worst feeling. Because I think that year on the rankings, I think it was either me first, him second, or vice versa. And I remember the scores were like 2.5 and 2.25 at 39. And then the third guy in Europe had like 3 at 11, So it was going to be the ultimate showdown, and it really didn't happen.
Yeah, you moved the two Italians who are dominant in Europe to the top of European competition to see really who's best on the day. And then you hurt yourself doing something silly like jumping.
Yeah, I know.
God.
Something so silly that I've decided to get back to it after 10 years.
We've talked about that. I know you. Yeah, you mentioned that. That's a very interesting choice, but good for you. We need more jumpers in the world.
Maybe I don't know if I'll go over this year, but I'll definitely ride my jumpers, start to do some jump cuts and slalom course, like the proper jumper winter training, And then maybe next spring I'll start taking pokes at it.
Well, by all accounts, from what I hear on the rumor mill, every time Will Asher goes over a ramp, he jumps like 65 meters or something insane. Like he goes very far because he's a natural lad. So maybe you'll be the same. Maybe you'll just go straight back to what was your best jump ever up to this point? Of course,
best jump was 59.4. So 193, 194.
Yeah. Very, very respectable jump. And what age were you then?
21 or 22, one of the two. Well, hold on, I'll tell you exactly. I was 20. Hold on, 2008. No, I was 20. I was 20 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're jumping ahead just a little bit, but while we're on the subject, when did you stop jumping? I remember you being incredibly proud in 2009 when you got a European medal in overall.
Oh, you do remember that, man. You do remember that.
That was a big moment, and that was in Norway, and that was probably one of the first times that we really hung out and spent a lot of time together.
Yeah, second time. Like the first time was in Finland, I think.
Yeah.
And then, so you won Norway, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, you first, Sasha second, and I was third, yeah. But no, for me, it was the overall. I mean, it was the last year under 21. I knew that I had a little chance. And I always tell this story, like I was in all three finals. I skied 3 at 39, I think, in the prelim. So I knew that in the finals, because it was windy that final that we skied. So I knew there was no chance to improve beyond 3 at 39. And jump, I threw a 56. I mean, classic Matteo jumping. Way later than comfortable the first jump, backing it off the other two. Completely opposite of what people should do.
Good game plan.
Exactly. So I poked a 56, I slalom 3 at 39, and I skied 6,900 in tricks. And Marina Mosti was the coach. I mean, we're talking like, I think Hall of Famer or soon to be in overall skier. And she asked me, okay, so what can we do? Because I was fourth by 60 or 80 points in overall. And first and second were unachievable. It was Martin Coleman, current world champion, and Martin Batalski, who was a great overall skier. And so she said, okay, what can you do to improve? I said, well, hands were maxed out. Jump is tailwind tomorrow. Toes, I could do toe 7, but I whispered it, like I didn't say it very convincingly. And she goes, are you sure? I'm like, well, like that's the only other trick that I know how to do, that we can add. And I'll never forget it. Like I do my hand run, classic mob, back to back out of time. And then I wrap myself in for 7. And Marina was with her left foot on the engine box, holding the pin rope with 2 hands and kind of looking at me sideways, like, I don't know if this is going to go well. So I did my 7, barely made it to front, a little windmill. And then I was able to do the run, and then tricked 73.80, got bumped up to third, and ended up working out for me, and I stayed third until the end.
And that's a great story that you went for it, and especially with a toe trick.
Man.
You really had to have some heart to go. I can't go harder on the jump. I can't really improve in slalom, but toes is where it's got to be.
And you remember, dude, like toes. I mean, you want to talk about not being talented? Toes, I was definitely not talented, and I tried really hard. I've been defined an elephant on ice. I've been defined a bear with no aim. Like I've been defined so many things about my toe tricking, but that day worked. It worked. I wasn't really confident in myself either, but best medal I've ever had. I mean, it's the only medal that I framed ever. Third in overall at U21.
I do remember. I remember it so well. I was having a chat afterwards, and I feel like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there was almost a bit of vindication there, because someone had told you that you weren't going to get a medal, or someone had doubted you, I'm not afraid to say it. The federation, like the national team. There you go. Yeah. So tell us that story.
Well, so basically in Italy, we're lucky that our federation has quite a big budget, and so they help kids and youth and open through money that you can use at your club to train. And they have certain benchmarks that you have to meet. And according to whether you meet that benchmark or not, you get a certain amount of sets paid at your ski school. Well, I was always meeting benchmark for all 3 disciplines, like for all 3 events, but I was always being paid as if I was a one-eventer. And the justification was, Matteo is just a slalom skier, right? So when and that was my whole career up to that year, up to 2009, where I got third as an overall skier, and the team manager was there, and I just flipped her. After I knew for sure that I was third, I just flipped her in her face. And then that didn't work out super well for me because we had Open Europeans in Denmark the following week, and I was supposed to fly on the Sunday evening because we had trainings on the Monday. And I called Bubu Alessi, the coach of the national team, and I said, no way, because the overall medals are given at the final banquet. So I wanted to be there to get my medal. And Marina interceded. She basically said, Bubu, don't you understand? Matteo is never going to win another overall medal ever again. So he needs to stay to the final banquet and whatnot. And I remember this scene like it's yesterday. Davide Napolitano brought me to the airport because the deal was if I found a flight for the following day and I paid it myself, I could stay for the final banquet. So Davide brought me to the airport with my ski bag, everything. I changed the ticket. He brought me back to my hotel. Davide and I were rooming together. We opened the room. Don't ask me how. Marco Menestrina was in there mixing Coke and ramen, saying, "Welcome back, buddy." I don't know how he managed to get access to our room, but he was in there mixing cocktails, and what a final party for me. That was fun.
Well, I was going to say, so I'm sure you told the Italian Federation that you're going to be just incredibly well behaved and, just go to bed straight after the ceremony. And then I remember we might have had a few tequila shots together that night.
Oh my God. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember I still kind of gives me a little bit of embarrassment because I got on the podium, they call third, second, first. I got on the podium third. I was tipsy already, so I get my medal, I get my little stuffed moose to hold, and then
I still have my one in my bedroom in
so
the UK, by the way.
So do I. And second, Martin Bataski, first, Martin Coleman. I mean, we're talking about proper overall skiers,
Yeah.
And I remember being on the podium and looking at them and saying kind of like sorry to them, like I don't know what I'm doing here, but I was stoked, like I was so stoked. Definitely one of the best moments I've ever had in water skiing.
That's very
cool.
cool.
The backstory and all of that.
Well, that's quite an interesting insight into your character there, because I mean, I know you, I'd say, pretty well, and you are not a spiky person who's against authority particularly. Or I'm not saying that you're a conformist. I'm saying that you're not someone. You're generally an agreeable person who gets on with people very well.
I would say.
So to hear you sort of get so motivated by someone, by a whole organization, a whole entity being against your overall credentials, and to take such joy in proving everyone wrong, that's quite funny.
I think you're correct. It's just you need to understand that my relationship with my national team has never been good or easy, and by that I don't mean the skiers. I mean not the skiers that were part of it, just the organization, the institution, the people running things. I never had a great relationship with it. Why? I think it could be traced back to the fact that my dad and Claudio are now can claim to have a history as tournament organizers, ski school owners, and operators. But at the time, not so much. They were kind of like the new kids on the block. And when you have a small sport and stuff like that, like we were badly seen in the federation, and I was the first athlete really that came out of Jolly. So by consequence, I wasn't very well seen. And so I replied back, particularly that 2009 middle finger. That felt so good.
That's wonderful.
It was good.
Well,
good.
Not a big surprise that, not to stray off subject at all, but maybe we'll get into it when we talk about the junior worlds later. But probably not a stretch to say that most water ski organizations are that they're sort of hard to deal with. And you don't get it right when it comes to the athletes. Maybe we'll get into that later. I'm sure we will.
So
you had not to. I mean, we obviously have to cover a few more things in there. So you won the your site held, and you won the under-21 Europeans in 2007, I believe.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. One of the things, I think context would help here, because we opened San Gervasio in 2005, and the lake was dug because my dad won a bid to receive utilization of the site if the site was going to happen. But we don't own the site. Like, we have a contract with the small town of San Gervasio, and the mayor at the time was very animate about, we give you permission to use this, you keep up with the area, and you organize events that attract people and business in the town. And so the first titled event that my dad organized was the U21 Europeans. And that was, I'm sure, because he thought, well, my son is under 21, but also because I think under 21 Europeans is the easiest titled event to run. You know, there's not a lot of skiers. You can do it on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's U21s are not as picky as open, but they're also not as clueless as U14 and juniors. I really think it's the easiest European, shall we say, to organize. And that worked out. It was a good European championship, you know, like we had the opening ceremony, the closing ceremony, like the everything that comes around a European or a world championship. And I came out on top. I was skiing very well that year. Matteo tried to ski that season, but it was clearly impeded by lack of training and pain, you know. But he still came anyway. And funny story about that, I was first after prelims with 3:39, and Matteo was third or second after prelims, something. But he skied before me in the final, and he got 2:39. And Bubo Alessi on the dock told me, if you feel you're like not in good shape at 2, zigzag, and so you can at least get a runoff. Don't get a silly 1.5. And
big move to say to that to a righty.
Exactly. And for the first time maybe only time in my life, like I basically said, no, there's no way I'm doing 3 again. Like, I had this certainty in myself that I was gonna get to 3 no matter what. Something that, to that level, to that intensity, I don't know that I felt ever again. And it was tailwind first pass, got my 38 down, good one, easy 2, but with the line, pulled to 3, got the ski out of 3 and celebrated. You know, like, win last of the dock is always the best, I think. So yeah, no, it was a very, very good tournament for me. And it was just weeks before I moved to the US. Just 4 weeks before I cluelessly, honestly moved to the United States to do college and water skiing.
So at that point, just to finish that up, so how many European under 20 or age group championships did you win? You won under 14, under 21, and you didn't win a junior under 17?
No, because I was always injured. Like, I skied 2, while at 15 I was coming out of an injury, and I mean, to win European championships at 15, it's hard, honestly.
Very hard.
And 16, I just blew it. It was in Czech Republic, like, missed 32. I don't know, just not really in it.
That's so I missed my first pass, Matteo. So if you ran one pass, you were a better skier than me by a great distance.
Yeah, I remember you said in the interview you didn't run your first pass. At that Europeans, I got in the trick final, which wasn't really my place to be. And I remember being on the dock with Zdeněk Coleman Sr., like the dad. And I remember with a fairly strong Czech accent asking me, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, I'm in the trick final." I have that memory from Krenek.
Italians don't trick.
Yeah, well, they do, but certainly not me. You know.
That was maybe his what he was considering. Probably.
But under 14 in 02 and U21 in 07. Yeah. Those are my 2.
So you won 2 Europeans as a junior, and then the great American adventure starts, and you moved to something that you probably worn 7 different items of clothing already this week, with Lafayette the Raging Cajuns of Lafayette written on it.
Not this week, but I have them there ready. Yeah.
So walk me through that. So you turn up there cluelessly. What was clueless about it?
Well, that I knew nothing about it other than Scott Jones telling me that I was accepted and that they wanted me there. I originally wanted to go to UL Monroe because Thomas was there. And I heard about this university in Louisiana where there's water skiing and you got school paid, but that was, for me, was always a given because university in Italy is virtually free. But, there was like Ryan Dodd went there, Jernasek, Tigas. I mean, all the great skiers went to UL Monroe. And the deal was with Tigas that, because I had learned a bit of web designing, and I told him he wanted a website done. So I told him, I'll do the website. You don't have to pay me, but help me get to UL Monroe. Like, who do I email? What do I do? And so he gave me the email of Trina, who was the coach there. And I sort of emailed, hey, this is me. These are my scores. I want to study this. I wanted to study computer science at the time, and I believe they had a degree in computer science. And never received a reply after 2 months. Like, I emailed several times. And then I met Fred Minelli, who was a very good skier from Italy, slalom and jumper, who went to Monroe with Tigas. And he told me, Matteo, there's this other university in Lafayette, Louisiana. It's the same deal. You ski, you get school paid. And it's a little bit of a bigger university, a little bit of a bigger city. I think you probably would enjoy that more anyway. And so I emailed Scott Jones, who was the team manager at the time. Maybe it really helped the fact that Scott is a very good slalom skier. Like, he can get into 41 at 34. And so when I sent my scores, which were like, I don't know, something like 2 at 41, 5,200, 49 meters, something like that, like a big disparity. He basically told me, you can come. I can't justify paying a full scholarship with these scores, but certainly 2/3 will be paid. And if you improve your tricks and jump, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to get a full scholarship. And that was a big motivation for me to improve in tricks and jump. Like, man, if I become a little bit of a more complete overall skier, I get not to pay school, And that was pretty much the goal from day one when I showed up at UL.
Which, just thinking of those scores, and forgive me, I am a stupid slalom skier who doesn't really get the whole overall deal particularly well, but I mean, I feel like there was people when I was at university in Lafayette and in Monroe and thinking of Lafayette as well, who had far worse scores than that. They were on free event scholarships. So probably a higher standard back then, would you say?
Well, more than high standard, I think less scholarships. I think one of the great things about schools like ULM, ULL, Alabama, FSC, like, they managed to make sure the university found pride in the ski teams, and then they were able to ask for more scholarships. So I think it was just a matter of availability of scholarships. So if you have 10 scholarships versus 18, you have to find a way to dissect them, give a bit to this one, and maybe a little bit to this one. Oh, this one is a great overall skier. Let's give them a full scholarship. There was just less scholarships back then, I think that's really what it boils down to. And so, packed my 3FM bag, never been to Louisiana. I had only been to the US 3 times, but always for competition, never for more than like a week, because I skied Junior Masters twice and I did the Junior Worlds at Jax. So I was going to move to a place that I'd never been, in a country that I barely knew, for X amount of years. I didn't know what X was. And man, am I happy that I made that decision.
I mean, I think we can both agree that both of our moves to Louisiana was an unbelievably good move for both of us. But initially, tell me your thoughts on that. I mean, I'm sure that it's fair to say that Louisiana there's not many places that are more different from Europe in the US. Yeah. So so what did you think when you turned up there?
Well, at first it was a bit overwhelming, but it played to some degree played to my advantage, because one of the things I don't know if I ever told you this, but I was an insomniac during my high school days. So I would sleep like 3 hours a night, not able to sleep. And the third or fourth doctor that I saw here in Italy that finally didn't tell me to take pills, he was like, well, if you move there, you're going to be pretty overwhelmed, like new country, new place, new people. You're going to start sleeping pretty regularly in a span of 2 or 3 months. And so that was true, and it really happened. By the end of my fall semester, I was sleeping like 7 to 8 hours. So in that regard, it was, the fact that it was overwhelming was good. In terms of life and skiing and school and different language, I struggled a bit the first semester. To the point that I was thinking about moving back home. And that's where my dad, my sister, my family really came in and said, look, you've been wanting to do this for so long. Just give it another semester, give it another shot, and let's see. And luckily, by the end of my first year, I was comfortable, happy of my decision, and all of that. But the first semester was rough. It was rough. It was good on the skiing side, but everything else, I was a little bit overwhelmed.
With the language and also, not to tell your story for you, but we all know you as a high level, psychologist, sports psychologist. So, yeah. But you started off doing a different degree, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I started as a computer science degree major, but I also got there late because I had the view of university in the US. I had a view of university in Italy. Starts towards the end of September. You don't have to really attend as long as you do well on your exams. So I showed up at UL a month after the school started, and everyone was like, where have you been? I'm like, I don't know. I had record tournaments that I wanted to ski, and
not even titled events. Just I wanted to ski that record tournament in Ravenna.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was chasing scores. I didn't have time to come and attend class, and then I quickly realized, wow. So part of the stress was I was taking BS classes that really didn't matter for my degree, barely taking 12 credits so that I could be eligible for nationals. It was a bit of a shit show first semester, really. And then things got in line and everything started to make a little bit more sense. But I did start as a computer scientist. Yeah, because, I don't know, my high school here in Italy was focused on maths and physics, seemed like a good degree with a good job afterwards. The plan was, do your undergrad, make good money, you can work from Orlando, you become a pro skier. That was kind of like the simplistic thinking, And then by year 3, where I truly started programming, I had this realization that I hated it. I love the maths, I love the physics, I love the logics, everything, all the prereqs to finally get to programming. And I remember seeing classmates around me stoked, finally I get to do this, And I found it dreadful and boring and frustrating and not rewarding at all. And that's when I had this bit of a crisis, where I thought, well, then what the hell do I do? I love philosophy, which I've always loved in high school, but this Freddie made national news. UL that semester canceled the philosophy major. What kind of university does that? If there's one degree that's, exemplifies university is philosophy, and they canceled it. No more major. And then the next thing was psychology. So I kind of got into psychology as a backup, and luckily I ended up loving that backup. But yeah.
So what do you think? So I mean that's a huge swing, right? You've gone from something that's not just digital in that you're dealing with computers, but digital in terms of its ones and zeros, and then you switch to something that's very analog in the way that of course there's a lot of science to psychology, but in the way that you think and understand it, it's not as binary. So that's a huge change. Why I mean, obviously you were comfortable making it and it was exactly the right move for you, but was that not a little bit stressful?
No, for whatever reason, the second I got into that degree, I felt right at home. And to the point that I switched. I mean, obviously computer science and psychology are very different majors, so not a lot of courses transferred, right? So I was taking 18 to 21 credits every semester just to catch up and graduate at a decent time, and I couldn't get enough of it. Like, I was studying day and night. I loved the subject matter. Of course, some classes less than others, but always really intrigued, always locked in class. If there was a study session, I was the first one to say, yes, let's do it. So there I realized, wow, psychology is really what I want to do, which is, in a way, it requires this similar thought processes as philosophical argumentation, but the consequences seem to be more, obviously, scientific, but also more applicable, right? Like, you can help human beings, you can study how the brain is, you can predict behavioral patterns. Like, that seemed pretty cool, you know? And so I finished my degree wanting more. I didn't know yet which branch of psychology, because there's so many, but I knew that I wanted more. So in a sense, I was lucky that psychology was the backup. But you gotta imagine me explaining my dad, who has a middle school degree, what psychology is. You know, like, my dad had to learn computers for his business, like, so that he didn't need a secretary. So computers he understood, right? So when I told him I want to switch to psychology, he was like, what the hell is psychology? Like, what is it? What would you do for a job? Like, but there my dad gave me what became my life motive, you know, because I was in shock, Freddie. Like, I went from thinking that I loved something to profoundly hating it and not really being sure about the backup. And my dad gave me this rule, which I've used with my students a lot, like, is do what you love. And if you can't, do something that you like, but that allows you to do what you love, right? And so he brought me his example. Like he said, I have a business. I like it. It's not that I love what I do, but I like it enough. But it allows me to do what I love, which is taking the free time and having the financial stability to run a ski school, right? And I must say that so far I still love my field, so I'm one of the lucky ones.
And what do you look back now and just go, wow, how lucky was I that Lafayette cancelled that degree?
You know, sometimes I think about that. Sometimes I think about, what if they had philosophy? What if I went through it? But then again, you know, they canceled the major, but they kept a minor. Because you can fit a minor in philosophy in a lot of degrees, right? Like, psychology is a straightforward one, business, management, mathematics. Like, you can fit a minor in psychology, in philosophy, pretty much anywhere you want, according to the courses you take. And so I did minor in philosophy, and I noticed there I had the parallel. Like, there were semesters where I was taking 2 philosophy courses and 4 psychology courses. And I noticed that I loved philosophy as an intellectual exercise and a way to reason in a little bit of a cleaner way, but I didn't see what I was going to do with it, right? Whereas in psychology, there were all these options, you know, like, you could be a researcher, you could be a psychologist, you could be, like, a researcher, different kinds of researcher. You could be a psychologist in a business, or with athletes, or with clinical patients. Like, there were so many options. So eventually psychology overtook, you know. But yeah, I sometimes find myself thinking maybe I would have ended up switching to psychology out of need. I don't know.
That's interesting, but they made the jump for you, and it was fortuitous.
Oh yeah. I remember I went. So you need to understand, like, the computer science program at UL is top 20 in the nation. Like, it's really good, really high up in terms of, like, they have their own building on campus, super technological. you smell the prestige when you're there, you know? And I remember jumping into the dean's office uncalled for. Like, I met this guy a few times at the gym, but I literally jumped uncalled for, undergraduate student. And I remember asking, if I get a computer science degree, obviously I'm going to have to program a lot during the degree, but will I get not to program once I get out of the degree? And the guy was so confused. He was like, no, as a computer scientist, that's what you do. You program. And I remember out of my mouth, with no filter came, I need to get out of here as soon as possible, you know? And he was super grateful. Like, when it came to transition to psychology, he helped me like mad. Like, he was the dean. He didn't have to do that, but he really helped me. He got in touch with the head of the psychology department and really helped me get as many courses as we could transferred there. But that was a surreal experience, the whole switch, you know. But yeah, it worked out. It worked out for sure.
So where are we up to here at the point you graduate your undergrad? What year would that have been?
So I graduated. It took me 4.5 years, and I graduated fall 11.
Fall of 11.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then you moved on to do a master's there. And then, I mean, that would have been for another couple of years. And then,
Correct.
Do you want to, how was that transition? Was it a big jump in terms of difficulty?
For sure.
And yeah.
For sure. And I would say more from undergrad to master's than from master's to PhD.
Very interesting.
Well, for a few reasons. Graduate degrees always start in the fall. I don't know of many graduate degrees that start in the spring, at least in psychology. So I had a semester gap, and I ended up using the optional practicum training, which is a side thing that you can do with your student visa in the US. And I ended up working for Jay Bennett. And so I went from 8 months of both really water skiing really hard, trying to learn as much as I could in that realm, to get back to school in a high level, like school. Like, it's not, the master's in psychology at UL is good, but it's just the shift from undergraduate textbook, respill what you've learned, to now you have to criticize what you're reading, and you have to know it and digest it yourself. There's not a textbook that does it for you. That was a big jump. Learn how to write properly, at least scientifically properly. I didn't struggle. I must say I did very well in my master's, but I understood from week one that this was a different deal. So I jumped head first into it, and I had a very good experience there.
And so after and you knew at this time that you were going straight through to do a PhD, or you were sort of, still dipping your toe, maybe I get the master's and see how we go?
Yeah, it was a random things. Like, I had 2 or 3 cognitive psych courses with a professor, Dr. Check at UL, and he kind of took me aside my last semester at undergrad and said, Matteo, you should come back for the master's. You're a very good student. I don't see why you wouldn't get an assistantship. We don't have PhD here, so we give assistantship to master students, which is a fairly rare occasion in psychology. And you should come back. Like, this is a good general master's. You're going to learn how to do research, and whatever doctoral degree you decide to get into, you're going to have high likelihood of getting accepted. Like, we prepare you with the basic graduate courses, right? And so, yeah, well, I kind of knew that in psychology you had to keep going. That was clear to me. Now, what field I wanted to get into, that wasn't clear to me, which is why I enjoyed that general master's degree, because I'm like, okay, we do a bit of social psych, a bit of personality, a bit of clinical psych, cognitive, neuro. Like, we're going to get a bit of everything, and I'll find my way there. And then sports psych came back, like, it was the most sensical pairing that I've always avoided, because because why? I'm an athlete, I do psychology, sports psychology. That it can be that simple, you know. And sure enough, after a year that, you know, I started reading a lot of literature and stumbled upon the sports psych literature, I realized, okay, that's what I'm interested in. That's really what I'm interested in, you know. So
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a very broad question, but, you know, I've got to ask it. This is a water ski podcast. Would you say that your extended studies, for which, you know, you've gone extraordinarily far, have helped your water ski career? Do you use your studies for yourself? And if so, is it hugely or just a little bit?
It's just a little bit. I think an analogy that works well is if you're a great coach, you're not necessarily going to be a great water skier. And so the same goes, but certainly if you're a great coach, you have a wealth of knowledge that you can apply to your skiing if you decide to ski. So the same goes with sports psych. Like I learned a lot. I feel fairly proficient in helping athletes improve their mental game. But would all that knowledge make me, let's say, independent from having a sports psychologist? No. And that's also because of the way the psychological work works. Like a lot of it is like the relationship that you create with the person helping you, the trust that you put in that person, a little bit like a coach-athlete relationship, right? So, no, I mean, certainly some of the things that I've learned, I was able to apply to my own skiing or to my own progression in water skiing. I would say way more of what I've learned and I keep learning in sports psychology informs my water ski coaching. That's for sure. That's for sure. But in terms of skiing, yes, certain techniques I use on myself and it has helped to a good degree.
So that's interesting. Sorry.
Yeah. But I was going to say not as much as if I didn't even study sports psychology and I had a sports psychologist consistently through my career. The second case would have helped way more.
I understand. Okay, so it's an interesting thing that you take more into your coaching from your studies than into your skiing, but that's probably, my understanding that because you both your ski coaching and your understanding of sports psychology, and the way you practice it is external, whereas, you know, for your skiing it would be internal. So they're more concurrent, those two external activities, being, you know, giving advice, you know, in a sports psychology perspective, and also as a ski coach perspective.
Oh, it's a very good point. Certainly, there's always that relationship there, but certainly not when you're skiing. When you're skiing and you're trying to coach yourself or sports psychology yourself, like, of course, it's a much harder thing. And I would say not necessarily doomed to fail, but it can only get so far, right? It can only get so far. But no, I mean, certainly the field that I love and that I spent a lot of years trying to educate myself in, now I just finished my PhD and I realized that I have to continue educate myself in it. It's not just you get the PhD and job's done. You know, you have to continue stay proficient and competent for sure.
Just like a water ski coach never stops learning. There's always something new to see that you've missed, and also that there's always, as the sport changes, just as, you know, psychology will change through new studies and new understandings, that, you know, as the sport changes through new equipment and all that sort of stuff, then you've got to adapt.
Absolutely. No, it's the same. It's the same exact thing. Not as much research in water skiing, but to digest, but certainly, you know, new techniques, new equipment, new ways of understanding how slalom works. No, I mean, it's the same thing.
So you're in both walks of your life. I mean, I'm assuming you're going to be coaching for a very long time, because I know how much you enjoy it. So both the coaching and the sports psychology part of your life, you're never going to stop learning. You've got a wealth of of knowledge that's going to come into your head over the rest of your life.
Oh, and what a better life to have, right? I mean, I love water skiing. I love the field of sports psychology. I love helping athletes, whether it is through my profession or through coaching, which is also a little bit of my profession. And I love learning. So, I mean, going back to the rule that my dad gave me, I think I occupy my day with the things that I love, and those are becoming the way in which I sustain myself, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this interview with me. I just wanted to take advantage of this break we had in our conversation to let you know that this episode of the Water Ski Podcast is also brought to you by the Flowpoint Method. The Flowpoint Method is the by now famous online water ski training program developed by Jenny LeBeau, and that magician of drone reverse piloting that is Marcus Brown. You might have seen some of his videos, and you might have heard his interview here on this show. So Jenny and Marcus covered technique, fitness, nutrition, mindset, and truly adopted a holistic approach in creating the Flowpoint Method for people who are committed to take their skiing to the next level. Personally, I love it. The program just kicked into the post-season training module, which I'm full-headed in, and I love it. And I believe they have the right approach. I've said it before, and that's why I'm collaborating with them on the mindset section of the Flowpoint Method. With daily and weekly updates and an extremely extensive library of videos, instructionals, and writings, you can finally remove all the guesswork and get the most out of your time on the water. You can become a member of the Flowpoint Method by going to thewaterskipodcast.com/Flowpoint Method, one word, or you can click on the link in the show notes. Now, back to the last part of this interview.
All right, so we've obviously talked about your education and about, the studious part of your education. But a lot of water skiers, they don't go to university just for, just to get a degree. They go to well, one, have fun, but two, to achieve and improve during a collegiate career. Yep. I know that you use that to a very high degree, and I think that it was something you really enjoyed. So was that part of what attracted you to America in the first place, beyond just Thomas de Gasperi having been there, or were you pretty new to that? You didn't really understand the collegiate thing, and it was just a great big surprise when you got there?
Massive surprise. I had no idea. I knew that you had to ski some tournaments for them, but it was more like the thinking was, I'm in the US, there's a lot of pro tournaments. I've run 39. I am at the level where I can aspire to become pro, right? And then I'll be a university. They let you ski for free. That's pretty good. That was kind of the rationale. And then the whole collegiate water ski experience opened up in front of me that fall, and I was like, okay, that's really what I want to do. That's so much fun. It becomes a team event. I need to improve my tricks and jump, which would help in the regular water skiing, like the non-collegiate skiing stuff side of things. And so I was on board right away, especially because the skiers in the team who had been there before, I was the only freshman that year, made me understand the importance of it. I saw that they were helping each other out. When I saw Steve Critchley slalom skiing, I'm like, okay, there's something to this thing. Like, he really wants to help out, So, I was like, okay, well, then I need to trick and I need to jump and I need to improve in this, And funny enough, already that first semester, I made a little bit of a statement, because on paper, I was the worst jumper and not the best tricker by any stretch of the imagination. And by the end of the first nationals we skied that year at Bennett's, I posted the second jump score and the second trick score. So there I already said, okay, well, at least I showed Scott that I have a future in these two events and I can provide to the team, because I did. And then luckily the start of my second year, that fall, I paid the 1/3 of tuition I had to pay, and then I received a check from the university with that money back, which was so cool. Like Scott didn't tell me he wanted me to be surprised. And so from then on, I was on a full scholarship.
So you got the check, and that was you're good enough. You've proved yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. But it was sent by the university, it wasn't an email from Scott, hey, the university will give you this money back. Like I just received an official letter from the university, which, of course, the first thought was, what the hell did I do? Like where did I screw up in signing up for something? And no, it was a check for the same amount of money to the cent that I paid a month prior or 2 months prior.
Well, there's nothing much better than getting a check from somewhere that you don't really expect.
Oh yeah, no, it's great.
That would be an especially sweet one, I would imagine, especially being stressed that you've messed up a class or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Matteo,
exactly.
We're going to send you back to Italy. Oh no, here's a check.
Oh yeah, here's a check. It's for digits. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's great.
But no, I was into it right away. And it was a big change for me because I grew up in a ski school with a driver and a coach, and I virtually never had to do anything besides be on the dock on time with my ski on. And there I learned how to drive. I learned, I was already riding in the boat before moving to Lafayette, like kind of helping out friends here at the ski school. So that wasn't too new, but driving, fix the course, fix the ramp, put the boat in the water, clean up the place, mow the grass, like all these things, like they were so foreign to me that I learned pretty quickly that's what a collegiate team does, and I grew up in the process for sure.
In exchange for your free skiing, you have to run it, like it's yours.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a really, really great deal. I always say there is not many better deals in water skiing than being a collegiate skier. Yeah,
no, for sure. And both that aspect you just mentioned, but also the fact that you're skiing as a team, the fact that your skiing matters so much more there, because if you screw up and they were relying on your score, you have all your teammates that are going to be affected. You have the university at large, which especially UL, ULM, they're watching over. They're putting up so many scholarships. They want to see some success. And that is not to say that we have ever received pressure anywhere, but you feel that pressure. So when you're there, should I take 38 headwind or tailwind because I want to try 39 head? Well, hold on, 38 needs to be 100%, So it was a superb experience. Like I've said it so many times, the best 4 years in water skiing that I've ever had.
That's very cool. And I think that, people listening to this, people that are considering their future, people whose kids might be considering their future, what they might do. I mean, there's no greater of a recommendation than to hear that, right?
Oh, for sure. And as you well know, because I know you're a water ski podcast aficionado, my first interview was a collegiate water skiing interview. I interviewed basically the president of Clemson, Ashley Stevens, the president of Clemson water ski team. And I wanted to hear how they managed with no scholarships to get so many skiers, so many good skiers, and ended up top 5 in nationals. So no, the collegiate water skiing is extremely dear to my heart. So let me ask you this. So you came in as the only freshman in the team, which is a kind of strange dynamic in itself. And so you weren't growing with anyone. You were just dropped straight in. Yeah. How was that? Was that okay? Was it hard? Were people, did they push you hard or how did that go? Well, I was lucky enough that I somewhat knew Critch and Alvaro from Spain. Like I met them in, the junior tournaments and the criterium in Rockbrook. Like I'd seen these guys and they'd been there for already a year or two. So in a sense, I knew them. I had some kind of reference point. But yeah, I was the only new kid on the block for sure. But, a lot of the ski team members that were older than me helped me out, so them too, John Mommer, Luis Carl, Brad Ronaldson, who ended up being a very close friend. I received help to figure things out, from where is this building on campus, to where do you pay bills, to how do you drive the boat straight, like all these things that I didn't know how to do.
All very important things.
Are very important things. You don't pay your bills, they pile up quickly.
If you don't drive the boat straight, no one wants to ski with you.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't have a ski partner. No,
exactly. So I started learning how to drive tricks, and then eventually slalom, and then eventually jump. It was a lot of learning, but it was things that I wanted to learn anyway. It's not that I never wanted to drive here. I was never given the opportunity to drive, because there were people that were stipended, and that's who drove. So no, it was good learning, even if it was a bit lonely at times. But no, it was good learning.
So let's tell me this. I want your best moment in collegiate water skiing, and follow, just to be super negative, with your lowest point in collegiate water skiing.
Probably, so individual or team? Because obviously winning nationals was the best as a team.
Okay.
Hands down. Senior year, we got close the first 2 years that I was there. The third year, we were a very small team, and I think we got third or fourth in 2009. And then in 2010, we recruited properly. Danielle Bennett gets all the credit for that. And in 2010, we had a very strong shot at it, and we won, and it was unbelievable. Like the best feeling possibly that I've ever had in water skiing. But if we want to stay individual, probably getting third in overall at my second nationals. I got third in overall, fourth in jump, fourth in tricks, and fifth in slalom. So my worst placement was slalom.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it is.
But I think actually, your first answer was the most telling, because actually more than, even really international teams. I not come from a great team skiing nation, but it's so much more of a big deal, the team, that maybe anyone who hasn't done it can understand. So for you to say your best moment, that you've had in water skiing was winning nationals with the team.
Oh, but huge. For sure. As you know, I had the pleasure of coaching Sean Hunter for a few years, and he's now back-to-back slalom champ at nationals. Like, he won freshman and sophomore year. And when he won freshman year, I called him. He was fairly happy. The second year I called him, he was like, I don't care. I want to win the team event. Like, I couldn't care less about winning slalom again. I want Alabama to win. And that's true collegiate spirit, when we won nationals, I screwed up slalom big time. And I didn't care about me. I cared about the points that I didn't provide the team that everyone was sort of relying on, hey, Matteo's going to be top 5 in slalom. I think I ended up at like 13 or 15th or even worse. But then I did well in tricks, I did well in jump, and I did my job there. But I was upset because I let the team down. And women and men's slalom is on Thursday. So that's a lot of things being determined already from day one, particularly if you're a slalom skier.
And the most points are in men's slalom because it's the most entered event.
Exactly.
So a high placement in men's slalom, there's a lot of people below you, so you get those extra 10 points.
Correct.
So there's big pressure on that event. I know that well as well.
Yeah, you do.
But that's winning as a team is not something that you get to do in water skiing. So when whoever it is going to the World Championships, like the team medal, I'm assuming this, but I'd be floored if it was any different. But the people that win the gold team medal at the World Championships, if they don't do well individually, they're still a bit bummed. It's the consolation prize to them, I would imagine.
let's face it, it doesn't matter. I mean, that medal, it's important for federations and national teams, but the people you see on that podium, more often than not, don't even ski with each other. They're probably peaceful competitors. So the team stuff at Europeans and Worlds, I don't think even the word team is a little bit suspicious to me.
It's not comparable to the we live together, we ski together, we drive each other, we party together, we die. We live and die as one, which is what collegiate skiing is.
Absolutely is. It's not even a comparison. It's not even a fair comparison. No, and that's exactly why I would say that moment in water skiing was the best I've ever had. I remember, I've always said, to that collegiate nationals, I contributed 20% skiing, 80% else, right?
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Coaching,
blood, sweat, and tears. A lot,
Oh, for sure.
Powerful emotion and helping everything else around it, not just the skiing. Driving the boat. That's what collegiate skiing is all about.
Driving the van, figuring out how to get a van. In my collegiate experience, the first year we had Scott, but my second, third, and fourth year, we were self-managing ourselves, and, that nationals was complicated in and of itself just to get rooms, get hotels, like any nationals. But we didn't really have anyone to help us. That particular year, Stine Sonnegaard took a lot over her shoulders in terms of management. I had my little share as well because I was a senior and I felt that I had to help. But it was everything else, make sure, we needed, I can tell this story now, we needed, women's slalom, first event of the week. We put Lisa Frank 5th rotation because she didn't really want a slalom and we couldn't really use her score anyway because it would have been most likely 5th score. But then as the tournament progressed, we saw that her regular score, which I believe was 2F28, could have gone above Monroe's 4th score. So we wouldn't have used those points, but we would have dropped Monroe 10 points, right? And so we begged her to ski so badly, please, Lisa, just slalom, we need, and she did, and she did her 2F28 and dropped Monroe's 10 points. So things like that, that you had to do constantly to make sure that the team was ready to perform, or tell Lorenzo D'Alberto that he wasn't going to try his 7 grand run in nationals, he was going to do the 5,400 that he does 100% of the times because that's what the team needs. And it worked. We won, I think, fairly convincingly, 300 points or 350. It was a solid win.
And what number was that? Do you remember of wins for Lafayette?
5.
This is number 5. Because right. At that time I'm guessing, but Monroe probably would have had around 25, 20, whatever it is. And so, you say what you like. You're underdogs based on history when you turn up at that tournament. So even sweeter in that situation to outdo what history has shown to be the traditional winner.
Big time. That year, nobody in that team knew what winning collegiate national was, right? As opposed to the team we were competing against that had won 1 or 2, or they could remember teammates that had won before them. They knew what winning nationals was. As a team, as an organization that went to a collegiate nationals, we didn't know. Nobody in that team had won nationals. We had got plenty of seconds, even a 3rd or a 4th, and we felt like the underdog. We knew that we had a really strong team, but we knew that it was ours to lose, essentially. It was the sweetest moment in water skiing for me, for sure.
Very cool. So anyone listening, send your kids to college to do some water skiing. It's the best. It really is.
Big time, no doubt.
Well, cool. So I did ask you for your worst moment, but I feel like that's a bit too much for this, unless you have one to mind.
Well, I mean, certainly. I mean, that the nationals that we won, I was fifth rotation. It was a glary headwind second pass and a strong tailwind first pass. Like, it was windy. And my brilliant mind said, okay, 32, 38. And I missed 38. So I ended up scoring 4.5 at 35, going from, I don't know, top 5 to nothing.
So Lorenzo D'Alberto would have been justified in doing his $7,000 run.
Yeah, I guess. Lorenzo D'Alberto beat me in slalom because he skied 5 at 12. So he actually brought points to the team, you know. But then he was smart in tricks. And no, I mean, we all tricked out of our mind at that tournament and jumped what we needed to jump. It was great. Like, similar situation in men's jump. So Critch was fourth rotation, does the first jump, we win, we know we have won, does the second jump, and then he had a third jump to try and win and beat Zach, but he didn't even take it and came to celebrate. Now, fifth rotation was Garrett Carber, who really wasn't, at the time, wasn't going to be able to contribute in jump, but at that tournament tried his first double cut ever just out of stoke for having won nationals, you know. And you know, it was unbelievable, man. Like, it was unbelievable. But yeah, probably worst moment. There haven't been a lot of skiing related worst moments in collegiate water skiing. Probably that blowing slalom in the last collegiate nationals. But
you still won. You won the tournament as a team, so it pales in significance to the glory that followed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. So moving on a little bit from collegiate skiing, I remember a moment. I remember it very well, actually, where we're in. It's 2015. I'm jumping slightly ahead.
Yeah.
And we're at the hotel for the Mexico World Championship, so it would have been end of 2015. And you said to me, we're sitting there, and you say, you know, really taking this my studies incredibly seriously. And I think that maybe water skiing is not going to be my main focus from now on. So do you remember your thought process? You know, obviously that wasn't a decision you just made to tell me, but you know, when did you realize that there was other things that you were going to focus on mainly than water skiing? And you know, at what point did that love for your craft and your studies maybe outweigh your ambition to be the best water skier in the world?
It's funny. I had forgotten about that chat, but now that you brought it back, I remember it very well. It was on the hall of that hotel at Worlds. So I think what happened there was we need to put a bit of context. Like 2014, I had the best season I would say I've ever had. Like, I did 2 pro podiums, skied 3 at 41. I felt competitive, even at the highest level.
Beat me. It put me into 4th at Atlanta.
Yeah. That was a funny car drive back. But no, like, I felt competitive, and then I did my PB at Jax 3 at 41. 5 days later, I blew my Achilles in practice. So I was off for 6 months, and 2015 wasn't an easy season. I mean, my Achilles was fine, but I had lost a lot of my confidence and even a bit of motivation, because you see, in those 6 months that I couldn't ski, I was doing PT, but I had just started my PhD. Like, I started the PhD mid-August. I blew the Achilles October 1st. So breaking the Achilles gave me an opportunity to go head first into the degree, which, in a sense, good thing that it happened, because if I took the PhD like the masters, I probably wouldn't have finished it or taken advantage of the degree as much as I did. Because the big difference between a master's degree and a PhD is that it's still graduate school. In your master's, you're doing 2 things. In PhD, you're doing 16 at the same time. Like, you're doing research, you're publishing, you're teaching, doing practicums, you're going to classes, like, you're into, 6 or 7 different research projects. Like, you're doing so many things. And being off for those 6 months made me realize, wow, this PhD is no joke. Like you have to be serious. Combine that realization with a very poor ski season at the end of 2015. I was thinking, maybe it's time to, put the ski in the shed for at least a few years, like really get serious about this. But honestly, that moment lasted 2 or 3 months. Skiing with Keith Albritton really reminded me water ski Stoke, and so I couldn't ski as much as I probably would have liked, but I certainly skied with effort and motivation and wanting to become the best skier that I could have been, despite the fact that I couldn't ski all the tournaments that I used to ski and I couldn't train as much as I would have liked. So luckily that moment of doubt that I shared with you in Worlds lasted maybe that winter, and that was it.
Okay. So that's interesting. So I guess I misunderstood. I mean, the way that I sort of took that was that your studies were going to be your sort of absolute main thing and main focus, and skiing would be something you were going to put a lot into, but not, the main thing anymore. But yeah.
I mean, in a way, it was like that, huh? In a way, I would say that was what happened. I was still skiing, still trying to be the best skier that I could be, but rushing to the lake, taking a set, sunset, go back, study. Like very quick, not every day, when I could. And then obviously the days started to get shorter as wintertime came, so I didn't really make it to the lake. Unless I really put a lot of effort to carve in time in the morning, but then in the morning Keith was at work. Like, I would say that in a sense it happened, but it wasn't as much as it could have happened had I decided, okay, just PhD, just my degree, my job. Luckily, I didn't give up fully in those years.
That's very cool. And you've come out the other side of it with the degree, and obviously you're still skiing to a very high level. And we talked on the phone the other day, and you said you're skiing, you feel better than you ever have. So
I would say, this is the best I've ever felt on a ski, even better than 2014.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Keith. So again, harking back to a conversation from many years ago, which hopefully I don't get this one as wrong. I remember you saying, I'm thinking of this Tallahassee, but skiing will be hard. And then a month later, there's these guys that dug a lake out there. There's something happening there. And of course, now you're part of the furniture up there, or you were for a long time, and super close to Lake 38 and Keith and all those guys. So talk a little bit about that, like your relationship and how that grew and how you found all that.
Yeah, no. So at the time, so 2013, we were at California Pro-Am, or Diablo Shores. I can't remember when they switched the name. But anyway, we were at the California Pro Tournament. And I was sharing with Tigast how, a bit of frustration, like the 2 PhD programs that I thought I wanted to go to ended up being not for me. And I saw this one in Tallahassee at Florida State that I quickly realized that was going to be the fit for me in terms of the research they did, the courses they were offering, the practicum opportunities. I said, that's what I need to get accepted. But I don't know of any skiing there. All I know is Corey's, but it's 2 hours away, 2 hours 15. So, and Tigas told me, no, there's this guy who came to try a ski at my ski school, and he's from Tallahassee, and he's building a lake, or he has just finished building a lake. So he put us in touch, and that winter I spent New Year's Eve in Orlando. So on the way from Lafayette to Orlando, I stopped in Tallahassee, had a couple of informal interviews with PhD students at the time, and then got to see the lake. And Freddie, you obviously have been there. When I drove down and I got into the gate and I saw this perfect slalom lake, my first thought, honestly, was I'm never going to be able to afford skiing here. There's just no way. It's perfect man-made lake. Buoys are just right size, right height from the water, looks pristine. And And I met Keith and his best buddy, Steve. And basically he told me, hey, you can ski. It's an honor to have you here. If you get accepted, you can ski with us whenever you want, as long as you bring a tank of gas. And we also have a couple of kids that would love to get coaching. And as long as you coach me and my best friend, you're always welcome. And I was like, I remember the thought was, it was December, like scarf, like jacket. And I remember thinking, I need to get accepted to Florida State, whatever it takes,
That's so cool. You went from probably a sense of elation seeing this unbelievable lake that we all get excited about seeing and realizing that there was access to it to your next thought, well, this is going to be hard to afford, to then Keith, being a saint in disguise and sort of giving you the opportunity, and you're like, okay, that's it. This is my place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was awesome. It was
and
awesome.
In some ways, the opportunity there, I mean, I don't know about luck, but the way it all fell in place for that all to happen. New lake, great guy who dug the lake, and someone who you've become very close to. Very, very cool. International
driver, because that's also important. Like if you're skiing 39 and 41, you need someone that knows how to drive the boat. Keith, senior driver, so perfect driver. I think he had a 1-year-old 200. Oh yeah, I know. He had just bought the 200 that pulled the Masters in 2013. So perfect boat, great driver, perfect lake. Ski whenever you want with us. It's an honor to have you here. So I was like, whoa, I need to get accepted to Florida State. And I knew it was really hard. So I did all that I could to have my application pristine and to finish my Masters in 2 years to the dot. And luckily I got accepted.
And the rest is history. You were very happy there for the time that you were there, and it went very well.
It really did. Keith and Karen are like second parents pretty much by now. They're like, I miss them. I've been away for 5 months and I miss them a lot. Like I need to, as soon as this COVID stuff is under control, that's what I'm gonna go for a couple of weeks of skiing, barbecuing, dart throwing, just to see Keith and Karen.
Fantastic.